Welcome to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset.
If you get one shot at this, what kind of shot are you going to take?
If we forget who we are, they're going to forget who you are.
You've got an adversity story that's out of this world.
Everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer.
Welcome back to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. Today we're with Chris Miles from moneyripples.com. Chris, how are you today?
Fantastic, Ken. You?
I'm doing wonderful. It is, I'm in St. Louis, Missouri in October, and it's wonderful weather outside right now. And it's not been that way for quite some time. So I'm super excited. Chris, before we jump into today's episode and we start asking questions and we get into the business, can you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what is moneyripples.com?
Yeah, I mean, often you refer to me as like the anti-financial advisor and things like that, right? I'm actually somebody who like goes against the grain. I'm a typical Gen Xer. I don't trust hardly anybody. And I like to pave my own path, my own destiny. And that's kind of where Money Ripples came from. It was because I'm trying to help people do the same thing. But in the sense that we actually help people create real financial freedom where you become work optional. You create enough passive income to work because you want to, not because you have to. And because the truth is, most people don't want to quote unquote retire per se. Like we don't want to just do nothing and sit on front porch drinking lemonade. That's kind of boring sometimes, especially depending on the weather in Missouri, But at that same note, we really want to get the people that real freedom. And so it's kind of like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but we actually show you how to do it.
Okay. So Money Ripples is an educational platform?
It is. Yep. I actually have a Money Ripples podcast. We actually have a one-on-one consulting. Like we actually coach people how to do it. Most of our clients usually do it within 5 to 10 years where they actually literally can quit their jobs at any point.
So you have a system to where I want to grow my money.
Mm-hmm.
And I come to you and you show me how to start doing that. And over 5 or 10 years, I can retire from my day job.
Yeah, exactly. We show you how to create enough income coming from your investments that is outside of Wall Street, outside of the typical traditional financial advisor crap that you get, from all the other media that tell you to set and forget it, slave and save away and set it away forever and all that kind of stuff. And hopefully someday you'll have something, right? Even like Dave Ramsey. I mean, he's kind of the, one of the other guilty culprits of teaching this kind of stuff out there. And really we're like the other side saying, yeah, that hasn't worked for several decades. Why is it going to work now? So that's kind of the thing there. And that really ties in with my own personal story, even as I was a financial advisor and then went away from financial advising.
I'm familiar with Dave Ramsey. I've got a friend that's going through the program or has gone through the program. He's doing very well with it. I find it, I prefer a little more balance and risk in my life personally. You said Gen X and trust. I'm a Gen Xer, which maybe is why I like a little bit more risk in my life as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I find it interesting because right now we're in 2025. We're recording this in October, actually October 11th, 2025. I'm not sure when this is going to come out, probably pretty quick. Actually, October 13th. I'm sorry. The world has changed drastically in the last week, right?
Yeah.
As far as trust goes, right? This is the week that Soro 2 comes out and all these new crazy videos are wildly good and hard to understand. What do you think it was about Gen Xers that have these trust issues that and then correlate that to today? That's why, like, what are these kids going to grow up like if we were with the trust issues that we had?
Well, I mean, do you blame us? I mean, we were the latchkey kids, right? Because our parents were like the baby boomers or whatnot. And they're like, hey, go raise yourselves. I'm trying to find myself, right? So they're trying to figure out their life's purpose and meaning. Well, we have to actually raise ourselves. We're the ones that, we don't worry about crashing on a bicycle or wearing helmets. We survived, we made it. And on top of that, I mean, we also grew up with read my lips, no new taxes, all that kind of crap. Like we heard politicians lying to us all the time. And there's a younger generation that actually trusts politicians. And we're like, yeah, they speak out of both ends of their mouths, right? Like we know that they're two-faced and that this really isn't real. And we become more, I mean, it could be jaded on the bad side, but also it can make us a little bit more objective, right? A little bit more of saying, prove it, right? Like that sounds all nice. So what? Give me something more. And so I really see us as kind of like the more independent generation because we were essentially kind of raising ourselves and how to grow up faster than our counterparts, or other generations that are surrounding us.
Yeah. And we're really the first generation with any kind of what we would consider any kind of mass media, more than 2 channels on TV.
Right.
Right. So we're the first generation that actually sees conflicting information in our news sources.
Yeah.
Before us, it was, you had one channel for news, you had the soapbox. Actually, I remember the soapboxes when I was a kid still, right?
Mhm.
You could rent time on TV and you'd have a soapbox. It was hilarious stuff generally.
Yeah.
God, I should try to find some of those. Yeah, wild times, and parents trying to find themselves. And I had a different experience growing up. I was adopted and grew up in a low income society, but nonetheless, I have trust issues too, and I don't necessarily know where they come from. But I like your input there and understanding that we have really the first generation with multiple points of view
Well, for
that we
sure.
got to consume.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we were the ones that are like, we're more accepting, right, of other people too. Like the baby boomers were still clashing on that point. I mean, that was creating, it was awesome. They created a lot of civil unrest, that paved the path for us, but no, I think we're really at a point where, in a healthy way, when we take our attitudes in a healthy way, I think I like to think that we're critical thinkers, right? Like they really do like to question everything. We like to really, like you said, be open to possibly being wrong, possibly having different ideas. We're not like just locked in on one thing because I think we just grew up, we didn't know what the hell we were doing, So I think I think just growing up with that, at least for me, growing up with that kind of mentality is like, I feel like I have to be wrong in order to figure out how to be right. And I have to like figure out what's actually going on, taking different viewpoints in and gathering that kind of information. And that's really where it got me to where I am today. I mean, I actually attribute almost all of my success to stuff that even my dad taught, who my dad was at the forefront of the baby boomers. He was always about, it was almost like trust but verify, Ronald Reagan, like it's
Yeah.
kind of like that. It's like, yeah, sure, do that, but question everything, question authority, question, what's going on. And because of that, I questioned even what I was taught as a financial advisor, which got me to leave being a financial advisor, was able to retire when I was 28 years old. And as a result, I was like financially free in my late 20s when most people are hoping to do it by their 60s or 70s, including my own father, who was like the super diligent, super saver. You work for a company for 40 years and they're going to take care of you. But instead they screwed him over all the time. And he just found himself constantly doing the same thing, put his money in his 401k, save up forever and pay off all of his debt. He was like debt free, like he was like the Great Depression era mentality. But applying it to saving, it just didn't work for him. 60 plus years old, I had to tell him as a financial advisor, like, Dad, if you try to retire today, even though you've done everything right from what I teach as a financial advisor, you'd have to die in like 5 or 6 years because you'd run out of money. And that wasn't something he wanted. In fact, he ended up working into his 70s until he was forced in retirement. And even then, now he's in his 80s. He's like stretching out every dollar, trying not to run out of money before he dies, because modern medicine keeps him alive. And that's the thing. I don't want people to have that kind of, crap, that kind of expectation of, oh, gee, I hope I can work and slave for 40, 50 years to then hopefully live on a very, very tight budget. That's just,
And I hate to tell you, we're going to be living longer. Like humans are going to be living longer with the technology that's coming. I don't know if we're going to have as many people on our planet, but we're definitely going to be living longer. I love it. It's fun stuff. Retired at 28. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't what I expected. So as I mentioned about my father. I was actually a financial advisor for 4 years before my dad said, when are you going to advise me? Now, this is the guy that changed my diapers. I didn't expect him to ask for any kind of help, especially for me, right? Because he was the know-it-all. But, he did. And of course, after having that meeting with him, I was really upset because I thought, man, this guy is actually, he literally did the things I've been teaching all my clients to do. Pay off your debt, save everything. Basically like what Dave Ramsey teaches, right? Like just, be debt free, save it in those mutual funds, and those retirement plans, and eventually you're going to have millions of dollars to live on. And then I found out my dad didn't even get there because he had Y2K. All of a sudden that stock market kicked his little retirement butt, right? And then and actually I was meeting with him before even the Great Recession hit. And that was part of the reason he had to even extend longer. It took him till really most everybody, especially the baby boomers, took them until 2015 to finally get back up to where they were in 2000 because of fees and everything else coming out, right? And so I was looking for something else. I remember I was talking with a friend, and this friend actually, I trained to be a financial advisor, but then he quit to go do real estate investing. And I was calling him up hoping that maybe he was broke. I thought like, hey, maybe he's broke. He realized real estate investing is just too hard. He should come back to work for me, right? Because that's what you should do. You should work for me. Well, I talked to him and he's like, man, Chris, my life is awesome. My dad and I have partnered on some real estate deals, and we've now doubled his income as a professor at the local university. I said, wait, hold on. You've only been doing this for like, 5 months? That's too good to be true. There's no way that's possible. And he finally just asked me, he's like, well, Chris, how many of your clients are financially free where they're not worrying about money? I said, you have to throw that last part in. I mean, they all worry about money. I mean, even the retired doctors still watch CNN. If you watch CNN, you're going to freak out about everything. So, I'm like, none of them are financially free that way. He's like, okay, good job. How about this? How many of you guys as financial advisors are financially free? Not the commissions you're earning, but actually doing these investments you've been recommending. And as I thought about it, and this is 2005 going into 2006, and I was like, man, there's guys that have been working here since the 1970s. They can't quit either. So I said, none? Maybe none of them can. There's your problem, Chris. Well, great, Doug. Tell me the answer. I'm not going to tell you the answer because you just got done telling me that stocks are better than real estate, because that's why I'd done arguing with him just prior to this conversation. And he's like, I'm like, no, listen, I'm open, right? As we were talking about earlier in this conversation, like, listen, I'm open. You got me. So what's another solution? He's like, if you're really serious, you can go find this book called Who Took My Money by Robert Kiyosaki, the same guy that wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad, but it's a lesser known Rich Dad book. To sum it up for you, it basically says mutual funds suck. So that's the whole premise of that book if you were to get it. Spoiler alert. And then, of course, he's like, go listen to this AM Talk Radio. This is pre-podcast era, right? That was a few years later. But he's like, listen to this AM Talk Radio, these two guys talking about real estate investing. And I did. And I started eating it up. And after a while, it was a few months in, I was like, I got to make a choice. Either I put blinders on, I forget everything that I've been learning about what's wrong with what I've been teaching and also what could be a better solution. Either I put those blinders on and just keep staying on my career path, or I keep my integrity intact and I quit. And so I chose the latter. I actually quit at the height of my practice as a financial advisor. And then I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I can be a mortgage broker because in 2006, everybody could be a mortgage broker. And then I do teach ballroom dancing on the side because I used to be one of the nation's top amateur ballroom dancers, right? So if you ever watch Dancing with the Stars, some of those professionals were actually people that I danced with, like on a team or even as partners and stuff like that. A weird fact about me. So I was doing that, I was filling my time. I was even doing some stock trading. I was still doing a little bit in the market, but I realized I wanted to know how a lot of these real estate guys actually did create freedom. So I started to learn from them. And the next thing I knew, like I learned things like instead of just setting my money and forget it, right? Set it and forget it. Like they always say, is put in the market and put blinders on. Don't even look at when the market goes up or down because you'll freak out. Well, I decided to look at what these guys were actually doing. I realized, I don't have to just save and accumulate my money and then hopefully live on less than the interest. Instead, I could literally go and lend my money to a real estate investor. Now you have to be the one doing the work. Lend it to them at like 12% a year. I get paid 1% a month. That means if I have 100 grand, I'm making $1,000 a month off my money, which was way more than like the 3% rule with stocks. I was like, I can live on 3,000 a year or 12,000 a year. Let me think. I'll take the 12, Yeah. So that's why I started doing it. And then later that next year, I was actually able to retire myself. So how did I do it? Was that like, I was actually able to retire by putting my money and using it in different ways. I even had I turned my starter home into an investment property and pulled all the equity out of it and then went to invest that money and stuff. And so I was realizing that it wasn't about how much money I save up. It's about what does it actually pay me? What kind of income does those investments pay? And that was the thing that changed everything, blew my mind. I was like 28 years old and I could literally quit my jobs. How is that possible? And then, of course, when you do that, everybody wants to know how you did it. So that's why in 2007, I came out of retirement to teach people how to do it right before the recession crashed. And which was perfect timing, especially because the people we were talking to were real estate investors. They were going broke. We almost went broke. I almost went bankrupt, went over $1 million in debt by 2008.
Yeah.
I had to dig out of that hole. And eventually I did. By 2016, I finally dug out of that hole. Actually was able to create it. Like now is up to like, not just pay off that debt, but then get up to over 10,000 a month of passive income. So I was once again financially independent when I was 39. So when people read on my bio, sometimes they're like, how'd you retire twice by the time you're 39? Because I screwed up the first time. That's why. So that's
Sometimes
kind of
you
a
have to
long
come
and
out.
short story of it all.
Sometimes you have to come out of retirement. I've got a couple good nuggets here to talk about, but I want to talk for a second about this 3% in assets for the kids out there. I'm not a financial advisor. Hell, I barely know math, but it is currently my opinion or my understanding of the deflation of the American dollar coupled with you got the inflation problem, but we also have the printing problem. And it's really, to make any kind of money, you really need to be above 11% a year to actually to keep your money spending the same.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, are there any investments that have hit 11% other than Bitcoin consistently for the past 10 years?
Yeah. Oh, there have. I mean, and that's a good point because see, the problem is people will look to say the last 10 or 15 years and they'll say, well, the stock market did that, which it did, but they forget about the previous 15 years before that, which it didn't, right? Like I mentioned, between 2000 and 2013, the stock market
But this problem wasn't
was
as
flat.
big 30 years ago, right? This is a newer problem of
Oh
the
yeah.
inflation and the printing.
Well, it is and it isn't. They actually started changing. The inflation stuff started changing when they took us off the gold standard in 1974. This is going on for 50 years now.
Yeah.
And
But
that's part of the problem.
in the last 15 years, it's been compounding at a pretty bad rate.
Well, yeah, well, it's because we're more aware of it, right?
Yeah.
Social media and everything just speeds up the information. But like, for example, if you want to check out inflation and real numbers, go to shadowstats.com. And there, the reason the guy created that website is because he was hired by the airlines to figure out how much they have to charge per seat to make a profit, right? Well, he would always use the government's reported inflation numbers. But starting after 1980, the airlines came to him and was like, hey, listen, these numbers aren't working anymore. We're losing money. It's like, you shouldn't be losing money. I'm doing it exactly like the way I did it even through the 70s. Like, no, it's not working. And that's when he realized once it got even to Reagan, right? So it's bipartisan. Doesn't matter if it's Democrat, Republican, they've all done it. But once it got to them, they said, hey, if we tweak this or tweak that, then we can show lower inflation. Why did they do that? Because of Social Security, which is another issue that they're even ignoring now because, Trump freaking tweets about tariffs and people flip out and you lose like trillions of dollars in the market overnight, right? All that kind of stuff happens. But what really happened is that all these guys are saying like, how do we make inflation less? Because with Social Security, they knew they were going to run out because of the baby boomers coming through. And they said, all right, we've been pretty much pillaging Social Security thinking we can just pay it later. Well, now the money's not there. How do we keep the cost of living increase? Because they give you an increase based on those inflation numbers the government reports, right? They're like, well, how do we make that number smaller so then Social Security lasts longer? We don't spend all of our money. So they started playing with it. I mean, even Clinton during his time, he's like, well, the truth is during during recessionary times, with the price of burger today versus the price of burger tomorrow, we don't look at that because the truth is you don't buy hamburger anymore. You now go for dog food, right? Or instead of buying steak today versus tomorrow, we go from steak to hamburger. We downgrade. So they found like different ways to do it or different things that don't change as much in price as before, and that's what happened. And so that's one of the big issues. Now you mentioned like there is stuff like printing or whatever else that's going on too, but this inflation thing's been a problem. It got worse in 2020 because the feds, who they say are trying to prevent inflation, is not true. They're still printing money like crazy. And it's just like, if you imagine this, like if someone says, oh, I've got orange juice, check it out, here you go. But really it's just orange juice, but you added a bunch of water to it. Just because it's orange doesn't mean you got the same nutritional value, right? And what they do is they keep pumping in more money in the system, and that makes the dollars worth less and less, like adding more water to your juice. Yeah, cool. It's I'm hydrated, but I don't have the vitamins that I thought I'd have. That's what's happening. And they're doing that because that's acceptable by the American public and saying, hey, everybody, we actually screwed ourselves a generation or two ago. We need to actually raise taxes on you, even on the middle class and the poor class and the rich class. We need to raise taxes on everybody. That doesn't get you reelected. No. What's the other alternative? Print more money, make it seem like it's worth less, right? And then that's how you try to figure out how to make it all work.
Yeah, it's pretty wild stuff. I've got some ideas. I'm excited about the future and about how I hope they re-jostle some things around to get the money to build out the infrastructure that they need for AI.
Yeah.
But you made a statement earlier about being debt-free. And a lot of coaches, financial advisors talk about debt-free. To me, debt-free is an absurdity. I don't even comprehend why a person would want to be debt-free with the way the tax infrastructure is set up and things like that. So can you tell us about what is there good debt versus bad debt? What percentages a person should have of debt versus income and liability if they're going to go into a kind of a world that you're in?
Well, Ken, let's go deeper in what you just said. Like, tell me why you think debt's ridiculous, or not going debt free is ridiculous.
For me, I have to live, and I'd rather live on somebody else's money than my own, and let my money do other things.
Right, leverage. Right, exactly. One thing I remind people is where did the whole debt is bad come from? Right, and if you ever heard the story about the woman, basically like the woman that bakes the ham, right? At Christmas time, she kind of had this quandary because she's like, she starts cutting, her kids asked her, they said, hey, listen, like I keep noticing you cut the end off the ham when you put it in the oven. Why did you do that? Well, that's what my mother taught me. Yeah, but why? I don't know. I think it cooks better or something. And so the kid goes and asks the grandmother, why'd you do it that way? Well, that's the way my mom did it. And then they asked the great grandma who was still alive, like, hey, so what's the secret? Like, why do you cut the end off the ham? I mean, does it make it taste better? Is it juicier? What is it? said, oh no, just we were poor during the Great Depression and I only had a pan so big, I had to cut off the end so it would fit into the pan. We could put it into the oven, right? And that's true when it came to money. When the Great Depression happened, see, back in those days, we had different rules. For example, if you had a bank loan, the bank could call the note due, your mortgage due at any time. So if they said, hey, even though you've been
Still
paying
can.
time, we can pay it. You got to pay it in full now, right? That's why we hear you see these stories from the 1800s. The evil banker comes into town. It's like, you don't pay off your bank loan, we're going to repossess it, right? Well, that ended after the Great Depression because that had happened because the banks were desperate for money. They're like, I got to get it because everybody's pulling their money out of our banks. We got to get the money from somewhere. You're due because everybody's pulling out money from me. I need to get it from you, right? And everybody's trying to take money from each other. Well, the government says, no, we put protections in place. As long as you're making a monthly payment, the bank can never call your note due. But we still play by the rules as if they can. And so when a lot of people freak out, what I've noticed is that people usually don't freak out over how much they owe, right? It's more because they have to keep paying a payment monthly. But
Operational
think
costs.
about this. I mean, think about this from this standpoint. When do your bills ever stop? Let's just say you're 100% debt free. Does that mean you no longer have to pay for anything anymore? You still have bills. You still got to pay taxes. You still got insurance. You got to pay on that house you now have debt free. By the way, if you don't pay your taxes on the house, guess what? They can literally repossess your house and take it away from you. It's not your house if you don't pay your taxes. There's also other situations too. Like think about this. I mean, if you had a mortgage, and some people are not too far from this, if you think about some of us that got like below 3% mortgages, if you knew you had $1 million mortgage, but it was only say $100 a month, would you care about paying that sucker off faster? No. What's the purpose, right? Ken, you brought up a good example. Well, if I can make more money with that money, why not use the bank's cheap money to make more money with it, right? That's the kind of thing about debt I always teach people is like, first off, it's stewardship. If you're an unwise steward of your money, if you're going to blow money, if you're a spender, debt is always bad. But if you're also a hoarder, like my dad was, like this hyper saver that wants to save on everything, for him, debt was bad too, because he would freak out that he owed people any money. But guess what? Even when he got debt free, he still owed people money. He still had to pay for groceries. He still had to buy toilet paper. He wasn't making his own damn toilet paper, right? So that wasn't an issue. So of course he had to keep paying, and he was never, ever financially free. That's the trap. That's why I tell people, like, if you listen to Dave Ramsey, it's not bad to go debt free if you have everything else aligned. But in my situation, like I've got the cash to be debt free, but I don't go debt free because same reason you haven't, Ken, right? Is that if I can make more than 2.75% on my mortgage, which takes no effort on my part, I will leverage that money all day long. Banks do it all the time. Banks, by the way, are the ones that actually taught you to pay off your debt. There was that Depression era issue, but the banks were the ones that taught you to do it with your mortgage. They're the ones that said, pay off your mortgage early. And you might think the banks would never do that. But I was a mortgage broker. They taught us to tell you, look, if you pay the same payment, the minimum payment for 30 years, you're going to pay double the payment, double the balance in interest and everything else. So pay it off early. Banks.
I've always
want
looked at
to
it
pay off
like,
early.
I would rather use the equity to move something else forward and be able to walk away from my house. I don't want to be beholden to a home.
Right.
To bricks and wood. Like that's not something that I want to feel like I have to have that to be whole.
Right.
So I want to be able to walk away from it any time. And if I had my life savings wrapped up into it, I would probably feel pretty committed to it. And it would probably be part of my identity of who I was. And
yeah.
Boy,
That's what happened to me in the last
more
recession.
than shingles and brick.
Yeah. I mean, people ask me like, well, what happened in the recession? Was it just because real estate values dropped? I'm like, that's part of it. But I was a mortgage broker. I thought I was still playing in both worlds. I was trying to do what you did, what you figured out. But then I was also like, yeah, but the saver in me that my dad taught me to be says pay off my house. So I was doing both. I was like trying to invest it, but I was also trying to pay off my house. And I figured, hey, there's nothing wrong with paying off my house because I'm a mortgage broker. Get equity out of it whenever I want. I can just refinance. Because in 2005, 6, 7, for the first half of 7, anybody with a heartbeat could get cash out of their property. And you could get out up to like 95, sometimes 100% of the equity. But when the bank started changing the rules, and I saw it firsthand, I went to refinance my house live 2007. I went to do a cash out refinance because I noticed that with our business, it was starting to get tight. So I said, I better get some liquidity out now. Well, guess what? The bank says, ooh, you know what? We just changed the rules. Increase your score by 2 points. I kid you not, 2 points. They're like, next month, we'll give you the loan. August rolls around. I did it. They said, oh, we just changed the rules again. If you do X, Y, Z, we'll give you the loan in September. September rolls around. They said, we're sorry. We no longer give cash out refinances to people anymore. And my equity was trapped. And because it was trapped, and it wasn't just me, it was everybody else, we started seeing home values tank. So all that equity I had disappeared. So Ken, if I would have followed your advice now and the advice I now give, I would much rather have that money in my possession, in my control, than letting it stay in the bank's control where they have it. And the banks want you to pay off their debt. Why? Because they want the cash in their pockets too. Because for every dollar you give them, they can legally loan out $10. So if you pay an extra $1,000 on your mortgage, you think you're so smart. Guess what? They're like, thank you very much. I can now lend out $10,000 and make interest off of you. That's why the 15-year mortgage is cheaper interest than a 30-year mortgage. If they wanted you to keep loans forever, they would give you the lower rate on the longer term loan because they know, oh, with interest, you'll make more. No, they don't want that. They want you to pay it off fast because they want less risk, because high risk does not create high returns. That's what banks teach and live by, but they teach you to take all the risk so they don't have to. And then they tell you, pay off your debt, get rid of it. No, they say pay them back so then they can turn around and make money off that and keep velocitizing that money. That is the secret, right? That's why I can take that money. I can invest in real estate and make, like you were saying, you got to make at least 11%. Yes, I can make at least 11% in real estate. I can't do that in the stock market consistently, but I can do it in real estate. Bitcoin, I don't know if they can trust crypto because it's booming now, but it's getting to the point where it's slowing down. Who's to say it's not going to become like another S&P 500 at some point? That would suck if it did.
Bitcoin has always boomed.
It's always boomed for the last 15 years, given
Since its existence.
Yeah, since its existence, right?
Just
That's the
since
thing.
its
It's like
existence.
it booms until it doesn't.
So
all
true.
these things, like we're taught all these little financial things to do that's supposed to be so smart. But if it had worked, why wouldn't a guy like my dad who did it all right, why couldn't he be free? Why couldn't millions and millions of other people not be free?
Because he's in the system. And what you're teaching is to get out of the system.
Right.
The system is there to keep people in it, right? And that's
right.
the way you go. And it's a wild ride. And when you realize to get out of it, I love what you said. It's not your house anyway. If you don't pay your taxes, the government's going to take it away. It's not your house. So I don't know why you're attached to it. I don't know why you keep your life savings in.
And at some point you're going to die.
Make the payment and you're going to get the inflation of your home and you're going to die, utilize that money. But when you're at like 50% equity, I think you need to use that money to start a business or get into some other asset besides just real estate. I think real estate's a really good play, but more than 50% equity is not something that I keep in my house, in my homes.
Yeah. Well, let me give you a real life example of one of my clients in California. He had his house and he had an investment property. He was like very focused. I have a lot of Asian clients, especially in California, and they're like the super savers. They make Americans look stupid, and they'll save half their income sometimes. And so he was no different. He was saving up his money. He was being very penny pinching the whole way. And then he told me, he's like, Chris, I have a 6-year plan. I'm going to pay off my house and my investment property, and then I'll be debt free. Like, cool. Well, what does that free up in your payments? It's like $4,500 a month. Like, all right, not bad. Cool. That's over 50 grand a year. That would help. It's like, but in the meantime, I just got to put my head down, work, and save and just pay it off, right? Well, I looked at the investment property. I said, wait a minute, how much money are you making on your investment property? Well, after I pay my expenses, about $200 a month. I said, but you have $700,000 of equity in this property. If you were to sell that property, put it into a CD, you'd make more money than you're making right now on that rent. He's like, well,
or move to Colombia and retire.
Yeah. I was like, he's like, yo, I got to pay it off though. Once I pay it off, it's $2,400 a month of income. I'm like, yes, I know you got your little workhorse blinders on, but you got to stop being the workhorse. Those horses die. Okay. Like you got to start looking at this way. Like, what if you could take that 700,000 out, sell the property, put it in other properties, maybe put it in other real estate. You could buy so much real estate with that money. It's like, oh, I don't know. Finally, 2 years later,
40 million you can buy.
Well, yeah, 2 years later, he finally did it. He said, okay, my wife and I finally agreed we're going to sell it. So he sells it, gets all the cash out, buys 6 properties in Louisiana. Buys all these rental properties. He's been reinvesting the cash flow. And guess what? This was supposed to be the year he was supposed to have them paid off to finally have that $2,400 a month. Guess what? He's now roughly about $9,000 a month of passive income from those properties. Not $2,400, $9,000. The guy's making over $100 grand a year because he got that money out of prison. And that's why I teach people that's the thing is get lean, get liquid, get out. Yes, watch your money. Make sure you're not overspending and blowing your money on stupid stuff, right? But get liquid means get that money out. Don't lock up in prison of equity in your home or, lock it up in 401ks if you can't get to it. until you finally retire at 60 or whatever. It's like, no, get that money out or get it liquid so then you can get it out into things that actually provide income today. Because you don't know if you'll be alive and, at the age of 60 or 70 years old, right? When you can finally enjoy it. My dad didn't think he'd be alive till 70, but he kept working. He thought literally the job would kill him because he had already had heart attacks and strokes by that point. I even talked to a guy just the other day. He's like, man, I'm worth $3 million. I did everything right. He's like, I've got 2 million in 401ks and stuff. I just turned 59 and a half. I can finally get to it, but I only have a couple hundred a month of income coming in. Like how? Like I asked my financial advisor and all they say is, it's like, well, just keep saving, keep going. You got this. Cause he wanted to live on 200,000 a year. And they're like, no, you got to have at least triple the money. He's like, triple the money. I have more than about 98% of Americans right now. And I still have to triple this. This is just, like, middle to upper
3%
middle
gets to
class
200,000
lifestyle.
by retirement.
Yeah, he wanted 200,000 a year of retirement. But remember, when you're 60 years old, people used to say the 4% rule, right? Like you live on 4% of whatever's in there. So if you have $1 million, you can live on 40,000 a year. Well, if you're 60, it's 3%. It's only 4% if you're 70 years old. That's the lie that many people have started to assume. So 3% on say $2 million, which is what he had in the retirement accounts, is 60,000 a year, right? Not bad, but that's not what he wants. 5,000 a month doesn't buy anything nowadays. Going back to your inflation point, he wanted 200,000. He's like, I want to be comfortable. Like I want to have options and choices. Well, if you're at 60,000 a year, you got to triple that to even get to 180,000 a year, right? That's the problem. So he has to get up to like $6-7 million saved up so then he could finally retire. But what's inflation going to do to it then? Then 200,000 won't feel like 200,000 anymore in 10 years, right? And that's what he said. He's like, I don't want to work till I'm 70. I was like, you don't
I'm
have
a firm
to.
believer that you have to create income. Somehow you have to create income and it's got to keep coming in. But at the same time, I don't want calls at 2:00 in the morning because the toilet's jammed up. How do I prevent that?
Well, that's because you don't have to. The problem is most people, when they think of, when they hear me say real estate, they think you go buy a property in your backyard and you have to deal with the tenants, the toilets, and the trash, right? And so you're out there plunging away. That's not the case. Like I didn't do that at all. I don't want to do that either. And so you have to find out how to become a passive investor, which means that you're going to be a hands-off investor. You're going to provide the money. Somebody else provides the labor. So like, even if I do buy a rental property, which by the way, I haven't bought hardly any lately since about 2022, I bought it several before. I would always have a property manager and they would deal with all that crap. I would just want to get the checks coming in. Yeah, I paid a property management fee, but the thing is, I remember I had one property I put $32,000 down on in 2018. And now it pays like about $800 a month of cash flow and it's appreciated. I've actually made about 400% total returns on that property, where in the market, I would have made about 100% returns. Neither's bad, but one's definitely better and I make a lot more money. So I can do that. I mentioned lending my money. I could lend my money to real estate investors to go and use, and they can pay me a contractual return. So like that same guy, he's like, I've got $2 million. What could we do? I'm like, well, let's just say on the low end, many of these guys will pay at least 10% a year. Well, that's 10% of income. They're not touching your principal. That's just interest they're paying you. Well, do the math. That's 200,000 a year you're making off that money, which by the way, what's your goal? He's like, about 200,000 a year. Bingo. He's like, wait, this almost sounds too good to be true. You saying I could literally not have to work till I'm 70 like the other Vanguard financial advisors told me? I could actually retire in the next few years? I'm like, yeah, I would give it a few more years. I would build up your income a bit bigger than 200,000
You
a
still have
year.
to work a little bit though, right? There's some logistics
Yeah.
that you have to do. There's still management that you have to get in there, right? You have all the properties, you got taxes, you got all the stuff that you have to do.
But you don't have to like deal with that stuff. That's the thing, is like, you don't have to go buy properties. You can literally be lending money out and let the investors do whatever they're going to do with the properties. They have to pay you the money like you're the bank. So you become the bank for those investors. They pay you the money because banks don't worry about what you're doing. If you're not, if you have a mortgage, you're not calling a bank and say, hey man, my plumbing really sucks right now. Can you guys bring somebody from the bank out to help me with my plumbing? Never has that ever happened, right? So no, you're not doing that with us, as investors. Like, no, we're lending the money. You better pay us back. And if you don't pay us back, I'm on your title. So if you don't pay me back, I can foreclose on you and take your property, which has X percent of equity that I require you to have in there. So I can not only get my money back, but I might even get more money than what you owe me. I can do oil and gas investments, right? I can make money. If prices are going to go up at gas pumps, I might as well make money off of it, right? I can do things with apartment buildings, but not have to do it myself. I can invest with other people, but almost pool our money together to go buy an apartment building, and then we get paid ownership interest. Self-storage, assisted living for people that are getting older, right? I've done things with raw land, where literally I have a group that they go do all the buying and selling of raw land, but that $500,000 I've given them has now produced over $12,500 a month of just passive income from that. So
Yeah.
there's so many ways that you're never taught by a financial advisor because they don't get paid to tell you about this stuff. They literally only have a license to sell you mutual funds and annuities. But here, there's a whole another world outside of Wall Street on Main Street, and you can even do private equity. You could invest in businesses and things like that. There's car wash businesses you can do, and so many things that are available that, again, an advisor will never tell you about because they don't have those options.
I grew up in a pretty wild place, and gambling was something that happened every single day around
Yeah,
me ever since I can remember. And I always knew that the better gamblers played with house money more aggressively than with their own money.
sure.
And I think there's a lesson to be learned there in real estate and business that anytime you have house money, that you should be playing aggressive with that money, in ways to really strike it up. Once your nuts covered,
Yes.
my base is covered, I'm on house money. That's aggressive play. And that's how you get, I think that's how you get out of the trenches.
Yeah, that's
I'm
right.
not sure.
That's definitely one strategy you can use. Do you have to do it? No, but it definitely helps. And you're right, there's phases because some people will be like, oh, should I be buying more gold and silver right now? Because gold and silver has been going crazy, even over Bitcoin, right? In the
Yeah.
last year. But it's like, that's good. But how much passive income does it pay you? Nothing, right? Okay, well, if you're first, it's almost like when we played video games growing up, you had to hit different levels, and then different levels, there's different bosses and different,
Yeah.
you get different swords, right? That kind of thing. It's the same thing. It's like that first level might just be, let's just get our passive income there. Then after you get your passive income and you even get beyond what you need to even live, I call that work optional, right? When you have enough to at least replace to be able to pay your bills,
Yeah.
and you go above and beyond that work optional, then we start building out wealth in different places. That's where we might buy more digital currency, crypto type stuff, right? Might do a little bit more of that. We might do a little bit more of gold and silver and things of that nature, or, you know, oil and gas and things like that. Like you can build it out to then diversify wide, right? But it's different stages. So yeah, right now, like if your whole goal is, I just want to get to the point where I work because I want to, not because I have to, great. We put that focus there first. Don't go chasing all these shiny objects, trying to like, maybe I can get rich doing this, get rich doing that. That's how you lose money. It's like, no, like we want to make sure we actually get a return of our money first, so then we can get a return on our money second.
Yeah, I've lived my entire life, my adult life, of creating services that bill monthly recurring, right? If it didn't bill
Yeah.
monthly recurring, I don't do it. And what I think what you're really recommending, and I don't know another path in 2026 because most of the IT services are going to go away
So true.
in a way that we've can't even contemplate, is owning assets that have a recurring revenue model to them. Is that
I think
really what you're
exactly.
saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. And it's true. You can even do that in the business space too, right? I mean, there are so many different ways to create recurring revenue. I mean, I did that both times. Like I created some recurring revenue streams accidentally the first time I got out of the rat race, right? I was actually just referring people to like a wholesale jeweler, and he's like, "Hey, we'll pay you 5%." I'm like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." Like I get a kickback. Is it
Yeah.
what they would call affiliate, today? But then it was just like, old school
It was lead swapping back then, is what we
yeah,
called
well,
it.
it was just like, hey, like somebody's like, I'm gonna get engaged, I'm getting married. I'm like, cool. Buy the ring from this guy, not from over here. You'll pay 3 times as much. Buy it from this guy, and then I get paid from that guy. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. There's a win-win-win transaction, right? And I
Yeah.
still do a little of that today, but I mean, we have a
We
recurring
used
model
to
even with.
spiff people if they bought it from specific places. Like, hey,
Oh
if
yeah,
you're buying this anyway, if you buy it from over here, I'll give you $100 when you bring it back to me.
yeah, that's right. There's so many ways to make money. That's the thing. Is like, especially if it aligns with who you are and what really lights you up. I think that's really important if you're going to do that in business. But yeah, I mean, definitely look for the ways to create recurring revenue, recurring income. I mean, that's where ultimate freedom is. I've never seen anybody say, well, just like one guy I talked to had $3 million net worth. He's like, but I'm still stuck working forever. Like,
Yeah.
what do I do? It's like you got to turn that assets. It's not about net worth. Net worth is worth less unless it can turn into actual real income for you on a monthly basis. That's when you become free.
Yeah. And having that month revenue coming in the door, cash flow is everything. I mean, I've sat on a bunch of cash before, it disappears. It just goes away. And it goes away
Yes.
faster than you think it will. So if you don't have money coming in the door every single month from something, man, it gets rough really, really fast.
Sure does.
You call yourself the anti-financial advisor in practice. What do you do differently on day one with a client that a traditional advisor would?
Yeah, day one, we actually look at your cash flow. You just mentioned cash flow, right? We look at how much is coming in, how much is going out. Advisors don't care. Advisors don't get paid to help you with your monthly cash flow. They get paid of how much do you have to invest? How much money do you have in savings to put away with me? We don't do that. We actually look at what the cash flow is and see where it is. Like one client we had, they came to us, they said, hey, we've got 5 million sitting in Google and Facebook stocks, right? Maybe we should diversify into real estate. They hired us for that. But then when we started looking at the cash flow, we said, wait a minute, based on what we're seeing here, we can actually consolidate some of these loans you've got, free up $4,000 a month. And then on top of that, we said, oh, by the way, we know you have a business, you do some consulting work on the side. Maybe there's some tax breaks you're not taking advantage of. Found over $30,000 a year they weren't taking advantage of on taxes. And then we found a property they had that wasn't cash flowing, but had $200,000 of equity. We were like, sell the property, reinvest that, make $2,000 a month. So already by the time without even investing a dollar of their stock money, we're able to free up about $100,000 a year of cash flow. That's something that financial advisors just don't do.
Yeah. And sounds like financial advice to me, but
yeah, it's what it should be, but it's just not what they do, right? Because they don't get paid for it.
Chris, what's the most common money leak that you uncover in high income households, and how do you plug it without major lifestyle pain?
I would say the number one leak you get is the money that you could have been earning that you didn't make, right? You kind of alluded to it as well. And what I mean is this, is that just like the guy that had, the two houses with mortgages on them, and he's just trying to pay them off. It's like, wait a minute, we could literally sell your real estate, make more income by putting it over here. And I see so many people, they trap their money in equity. They trap their money in these, retirement accounts or savings and things like that. And they just let it sit there and they hope that they grow. But instead, you can get that money out of that prison and then get it out in investing. That's where the biggest money leak is. It's the money that they could have been earning the whole time, but weren't.
I love it. And the money today, I'm currently in a position, just share, where I have more powder dry than I care to have dry, but I'm keeping it dry because I believe something profound is getting ready to happen in our world.
Ditto.
Is that good or bad at this moment?
I think that's great. In as much as that it's not out of an emotional reason, but it's an actual logical one. And it sounds like it is. Because I actually believe, I'm starting to store up more dry powder than ever too. One, for my business, right? I'm trying to make sure I have more liquidity in my business and at home. But I'm also like you, kind of like Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett's heralded as the Oracle of Omaha, the best investor of our time. But it's so funny when things get so frothy and the markets are so crazy high right now that people thinks he's an old idiot, right? But once the market shifts, he becomes the Oracle of Omaha again. They're like, oh, that's what you're doing.
Yeah,
Well, right
I
now,
am
Buffett,
not by far a financial advisor, but I did sell my NVIDIA stock this week.
nice. That's probably not a bad idea.
I sold it Monday.
Honestly, it's
Yeah.
so hyped up.
I sold it to pay tuition for my daughter, but
It might have
I
been the
did
best
sell it this
investment,
week.
unless she screws it over.
Well, yeah, it's a bad investment because she's going to school for education.
Yeah.
I love her to death, and she's on her own path, and I will support her in every way that I can.
Yeah.
But my NVIDIA stock doubled pretty quickly, and I was like, okay, time to get rid of that and move on. But we are emotional with our investments, and I was emotional with NVIDIA too, right? So how do you break that emotional tie? I mean, now you're talking about if you ever bought a home or a property or a business, and the first time you walk into it or walk to it, it's exciting. It's something that happens inside of you. Like, this is something I accomplished and I did. And you get attached to it. You become emotionally attached to it. How do you keep your investors over time? You grow calluses and more scabby in life about those kinds of things, but especially early in life, how do you educate people on that particular process?
There's a few things. One, and everybody's different, but for me, I know personally that, you can get excited with the opportunity. I usually have to let it ride for a few days. Like, just walk away from it. If it still sticks in my mind, like something just tells me, like my gut says, hey, you should really consider that, then I know there's something there. But if it's something's like, oh, I forgot about that. Even if it was like, you could make millions and millions of dollars, but I was like, oh, I totally spaced it off the last few days. It's probably not the right thing for me. Doesn't mean it's not the right thing for somebody else, but it's probably not right for me. I'll tell you one due diligence question. I have people of our clients, we go through like at least 8 questions of due diligence. The first question I ask is this. I have rated from like 1 to 10. The first question is this: other than rate of return, why would I do this investment? Other than the rate of return, why would I do this investment? I tell you, more times than not, people are usually like, the return looks awesome. Okay, cool. Why else would you do it? Well, because it's got a good return. Cool. Why else would you do that investment? Most people never think that way. I tell them like, no, it's got to tie in, especially if you're going to use time and energy. Like if it's a business, there better be some passion behind it. There better be some reason for investments. I mean, obviously I'll put money into the investments, but does it tie in with, for example, for me, like a kind of a personal like interest or something like that? So for example, like people, I mean, I got introduced to Bitcoin in 2011. I could have bought it for less than $1. The reason I didn't was for a few reasons. One is, okay, cool. It can be a lot of money, but I asked the question, I said, well, how's this any different than someone who just wants to go away from the dollar? Because that back then it was always about, oh, the don't trust the dollar, buy this instead. Okay, what's it backed by? Nothing. Okay, so you say the dollar's not backed by anything, but you're not backed by anything either. Why would I buy this? Because it's not the dollar. So, like, when I started to really ask, like, okay, cool, yeah, I can make millions of dollars, or I could have made possibly billions. I didn't because I was like, it just didn't add up, and because there was no real reason, rhyme or reason how it worked, right? In a lot of ways, you could still argue it doesn't really have a rhyme or reason why it works.
Oh, I could argue way on the other side of that, but
Yeah.
I am a crypto lover. I exited in 2016 because I was dying,
Mhm.
but I recovered well, and I'm still in crypto.
That's good. If you bought it around 2018, 2019, you got a better deal anyways than 2017.
Oh, I sold in 2016. Sold 150
16. It was still
Bitcoin at
going up then.
$600 each.
Yeah,
Brutal.
for sure.
I've
But
lost
yeah,
more
that's
in Bitcoin than most people will ever contemplate in their life.
yeah. But you just got to check yourself. You just got to check what's your real drive behind an investment, and do that, right? That's the key.
Yeah, absolutely. If somebody's watching and say they can come up with $10,000, are you an option for them?
If they just have 10,000 bucks, I would just say save it, Because for example, what happens if you make 10% a year on 10,000 bucks? It's 1,000 bucks. Barely moves the needle. I would rather have them do one of a few things. One would be keep saving, because if that's all the money they have, I see too many people are saying, I finally got
Well, that's
10,000
all
bucks.
they're willing to invest right now. That's what they
Yeah.
have. They've got 10 grand and they've got an investment bucket sitting there.
Yeah. They're just not ready for the investments we talk about here where you want to make passive income. It's not going to move the needle. You'd be better off just saying, how do I increase my income? Right? What can I do to add more value? If I'm a business owner, what can I do to add more value for more people? How can I add more value to my employer if I'm an employee and actually make more cash that way to build the cash faster? You'll make more money trying to figure out how do I make an extra 10, 20 grand this year? Then we'll try to figure out how to make 1,000 passive, right? That's the key thing. Now, when you get over $100,000 or so, then we should probably start talking. Now we start having options open up, because now we can not just hopefully do one deal, maybe you can diversify in a couple different investments to not only make more money, but also keep it a little bit safer too.
And I would argue to say that if you're sitting and you think you have 10,000 today, but you haven't refied your house in 10 years, you might have, so if you're sitting equity in your home or something like that,
Yeah.
I think it's probably worth at least reaching out to
For sure.
moneyripples.com and saying, hey, let's have a conversation. If somebody's in that boat, who's the person that you can help the most? Like they're sitting there and they're watching the show and they're scratching their head like, maybe I'm the right fit for this. Describe that perfect fit for your company, and then how would they get started with you?
Well, if you already felt something at this point, you probably are a good fit for us, right? Because if you're willing to go against the grain, to question the status quo, because you don't want to live a status quo life, you want something extraordinary, not ordinary. That's first. Generally, we focus more on high income earners, people that make usually at least 150,000 or so a year. They've got at least a few $100,000 just sitting around wondering what to do with it. Those are like the ideal people. That being said, I mean, the easiest way to figure out, because you just mentioned a good one, like equity, for example, right? We actually have on our website at moneyripples.com a work optional calculator. So you can accurately figure out, in my situation, how much passive income could I be creating in the next 12 months? That's literally what our calculator figures out. Because it does look at things like not just equity in your house, but if you do have a rental property, maybe that rental property isn't paying enough. Because some people are like, oh, I'm making a few $100. Yeah, but you could be making more, like just like I had that guy that's like $3 million net worth, 800,000 was in equity of properties. He was cash flowing $300 a month. I'm like, yeah, we could probably improve that, which is why he actually got on his calculator results like $200,000.
Nice.
And he's like, is that really possible? I'm like, dude, it's just math. Is it possible? Yeah. I'm like, and we try to do low numbers just to not overpromise anything,
It's wild stuff. I love it. Work optional is a really cool thought process.
Mhm.
Work option. I can go to work if I want to. I don't have to today. I think that's the dream for everybody, like not being on a clock. If I want to go be productive today, I can and be part of a
Yeah.
team. But if I want to just relax and take my own time, I can do that too. And I think options and flexibility is what I value most in life. And I think other people.
That's what we find everybody does too. Like,
Yeah.
just like I tried to retire twice, and I'll tell you, it was the most depressing time of my life. 2006 and the beginning of 2017, were the most depressing moments of my life when I finally just said, well, okay, I have this money, right? And it kind of goes with the name of our company, Money Ripples. It's about that ripple effect you can create in people's lives. Because as you're blessed financially, I believe that we have a duty to bless the lives of others, to create a ripple effect through people's lives. And yeah, I could just go sit on a beach and drink your little pina coladas or whatever, and do something like that. But what fulfillment do I have there? What if I can actually use my money for something better, beyond just my own lifestyle, which is great, but actually like benefit people's lives. That's why I even named the company Money Ripples, because I realized that there's these people that were freeing up cash flow and increasing passive income and things like that. It literally is giving them more options. And with more options comes more freedom, including a new legacy to teach their own kids. That's not from a place of scarcity, but a place of abundance, and able to bless more lives. And that's the ripple effect I saw, is that worldwide ripple effect that can happen just because we make the choice first to not just set and forget it and save for the long haul and hopefully someday we'll have something. No, you can have that money right now. Or as my sign says behind me, live your life now, not tomorrow.
Absolutely. That is best advice I've heard today. Live your life now, not tomorrow.
Yeah.
Chris, I've had a great time talking with you today about money and how to manage it and deal with it and assets and all those things. It's come to the end of the show, and Diary of a CEO is my favorite show. When Steven asks a question, ask all of his guests to write a question for the next guest. And I bought the deck of cards, and I've been asking every guest on Clicks and Bricks one of those questions. Are you ready for yours?
I'm ready.
It's from Dr. Philip Obedia, and these are all handwritten, so they're not always easy to read. Who is the one person in your life that deserves the greatest thanks? And if you were to give them the thanks today, what would you say?
Man, never just one person, is it? Right? This would probably be the person that he would never expect it. It would probably be my dad. Not just from a negative standpoint, what not to do, but even from a positive standpoint, because like I mentioned earlier, he was the one that got me to question things. He was the one that says, like, don't like be a free thinker. Don't just go along because everybody says it or does something. Like, be independently thinking. And I think that literally is kind of helped direct my life, and because of that, I mean, that's the person I probably owe the most thanks to. And yeah, he probably doesn't even realize it, that I would say that to him, because he probably thinks about like, man, I failed as a father. I did this and I could have probably done the life you did, but I didn't know what I was doing. It's like, dude, that's not the point. Like, the thing is, it's the values he taught me that really carried into my life that allowed to kind of lay the foundation for success.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't have a father, but my mother, out of all the people, and what she taught me, I didn't have an easy upbringing. My mother did not have, we were homeless when I was born. And what she taught me was that she would fight for my rights no matter what. I was a LD, learning disability kid with neurodivergent, and she fought so hard for me to have the resources, the technology to communicate with the rest of the world. I don't know how she knew I needed it as much as I did, but she did, and she fought no matter what. So she taught me that fight and that loyalty for the ones that you love, that you never, ever stop fighting for them. And that's something that I'll always be grateful for. And I try to teach to the people in my ecosystem as well. Loyalty and fight is a wild combination. If you're watching and you have somebody special in your life that you would like to thank, drop it in the comments and tag them on it. Let them know how special they are to you. Chris, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Ken, it's been an honor. Thank you so much.